if I had a nickel for every time the Summer of TV Treasures featured a foreign cartoon series that gained exposure in the USA thanks to cable television, I'd have 3 nickels! Which isn't a lot, but I'll use any excuse to make this Doofenshmirtz joke. Now we come to the big one, people. What many consider the most beloved of the obscure cartoons of the 80s, and one I've gotten a lot of requests to review. In fact, as far as cartoons go, it might be the biggest TV treasure of them all. At the time when the half-hour toy commercial was probably at its peak, in between all of that came from the mouse-eared fledgling network something that just shined with a wholesomeness that to this day may not have been topped in its purity. And it's finally time for those wishes to be granted as TV Trash takes you back to the evergreen forest with the Raccoons! Created by Kevin Gillis, the Raccoons got its start like many others of its time, originating as a series of specials made for the Canadian CBC television that started in 1979 before Gillis and Company were finally gifted a full series that launched in 1985. While the production staff itself was 100% Canadian, they did receive funding help from a number of other sources, including Disney, who was clearly looking for new programs to install on their still young cable network. In fact, the show originally premiered on the Disney Channel in July of '85, 4 months before reaching Canadian television. When it did hit the airwaves in its own country, it was an immediate hit, as by its 3rd week it was the 2nd most watched program on CBC, behind only Hockey Night in Canada. By comparison, imagine if Garfield and Friends was CBS's 2nd most watched show only to their NFL coverage. How was a cartoon show able to compete with Wayne Gretzky for ratings? Time to finally see why. The show focuses on Bert Raccoon, a free spirit who is always coming up with crazy schemes like he was a predecessor of Homer Simpson. He lives in the evergreen forest in the above room of the treehouse owned by his fellow raccoon friends, Ralph and his wife Melissa. Along with them, Bert's other friends include the aardvark Cedric and his girlfriend Sophia, and the sheepdog Schaefer and his son Brew. Originally, the dogs served as kind of a connection between this secret area of the evergreen forest and the human world, as we do see the dog's owners and the local forest ranger in multiple episodes. But the human characters were pretty much phased out by the 2nd season, and the setting essentially became Canada with anthropomorphic animals. And now remembering that just makes me want to see a funny cartoon animal version of Letterkenny. But the show is about far more than Bert getting himself into danger and his friends having to bail him out. In many episodes, all of them must work together to thwart the greedy schemes of Cedric's father, Cyril Sneer, who is basically if Scrooge McDuck had the scruples of a Captain Planet villain. He's constantly looking for ways to destroy the forest for his own personal gain, and the creatures of the forest must find a way to prevent his plans from coming true, usually by challenging Cyril to some type of contest, and or aided by the fact that Ralph runs the local newspaper. Did this show manage to send environmental messages without being as subtle as a sledgehammer? Apparently Ted Turner didn't get the message that that's possible. Furthermore, the show makes it clear that the main characters are good-natured by heart. And while Cyril is clearly an adversary, they never wish to do him any harm. In fact, the very first episode is still one of the best twist climaxes I've ever seen in any show. The entire story revolves around the Raccoons and friends plotting some grand master plan to use on Cyril, making him as paranoid as Howard Hughes on acid. But ultimately, the entire plan has been a surprise birthday party. That's not to say the plots couldn't be a bit repetitive at times. The fourth episode, the Evergreen Grand Prix, is really reusing the plot of the second special, The Raccoons on Ice. And there are quite a few stock plots that get used here, like a boy who cried wolf plot when Bert is pranking everyone, and then no one believes him when Cyril actually is threatening to destroy the forest again. So just how did a show that came out at the time when giant fighting robots, saccharine sweet ponies, and everything else mainly produced by toy executives become such a beloved hit with people who remember it fondly to this day? I think a lot of it has to do with the main character. There is a little Bert Raccoon in all of us. Someone who wants to live free and be able to enjoy life without having to deal with so many responsibilities. In fact, the dynamic between someone like Bert Raccoon and Cyril Sneer is one that can still resonate to this day. Cyril is from the old guard that believes one needs wealth and power in order to be respected, while Bert clearly believes that memories from adventure and being with friends are far more valuable than material goods. And it's pretty clear which one has enjoyed life more. It also helps that while the environmental messages in the show are quite clear, it's still done in a way that comes off as understandable. Probably the biggest issue with something like Captain Planet is that it was trying to paint corporate business as the greatest villain, while itself being produced by a major corporation. So the whole thing comes off as phony and dishonest. The main characters in that show are often little more than mouthpieces and pawns used to do other people's bidding, while often not being connected to the conflict on a personal level. Kevin Gillis and his team find a way to convey the message that the world is for everyone through the experiences of the characters. Cyril's schemes would affect Bert and his friends directly and give them a reason to do something about it. And it shows how such issues will affect everyone on some level. And it doesn't hurt that the main antagonist is not a full-on supervillain. Much like Boss Hogg, Cyril does have a code of honor, and does believe in keeping his word even if it hurts him financially. He also does truly care for Cedric, and sees him as a successor in his businesses. As the series goes on, he does become more sympathetic, and dare I say responsible in his ventures. Character development in an 80s cartoon? Trust me, that's a pretty big deal. Overall, the show does a good job in humanizing all of its characters, which is pretty impressive for a show about raccoons, dogs, and aardvarks. Of course, we can't talk about this show without mentioning the theme song, Run With Us. Originally performed by Lisa Lougheed, the show actually used a cover performed by Stephen Lunt for the first season for some reason. Who knows why Lougheed originally got screwed over like that, but at least her version was used for all subsequent years, and she was given her own character by the fourth season in Bert's niece, Lisa Raccoon. The show did manage to last 5 seasons for 60 episodes total. A reboot of the series called The Raccoons: The New Adventures is said to be coming this year of 2023, but as of this video's posting, nothing has been publicly seen save for an updated version of the title sequence that was supposedly made years prior, but whose animation style was rejected. And it's a shame because I would be looking forward to a series that actually shows that Cyril Sneer has more scruples than Elon Musk. The Raccoons is that one show that dared to be different from that era of over-commercialized cartoons, and as a result, it's one of those shows that keeps a special place in the hearts of those that grew up with it. And that love for the show remains to this day. In 2022, Kevin Gillis himself said the show seemed to be regaining its popularity, likely from people who originally watched it as kids, now wanting to show it to their own kids. And in a way, that's what can make a true TV treasure. Something that can be dug up again to be shown to the next generation, to hopefully inspire that generation into seeing what they can do to make the world a better place. Lisa Lafitte's song said it best: "When darkness falls, don't be afraid, you're not alone." But you know what? Just because it's August doesn't mean it's the end of summer, and thus isn't the end of the summer of TV treasures. Which is why next time, fortune and glory, kids. Fortune and glory.